Hello, everyone. Great to see you this evening. A lot of new faces. Just a couple announcements before we get started. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on the York County History Center YouTube channel. Couple programs coming up. We have a lot of programs now that it's getting a little warmer. Not tonight, but our book blast. We are now accepting books for our book blast book sale. The sale's not till June, but we started accepting books at our Agricultural and Industrial Museum on Fridays and Saturdays. On March 9th, Samantha Dorm will present The Preachers, the People, and the Praise, a program about York's Black churches. On March 12th, we have a women's history program by Amanda Owen of the Justice Bell Foundation. She's going to be showing a short documentary called Finding Justice, the Untold Story of Women's Fight for the Vote. On March 19th, our Civil War Roundtable program is actually going to be our own Dominish Miller, who's going to be speaking about the Daughters of Charity at the Battle of Gettysburg. And then on March 30th, we have a Friends of the York County History Center program partnering with Hometown History. It's a luncheon at the Valencia Ballroom and History of the Valencia Ballroom. So lots of good things. If you'd like more information about the History Center or any of our programs, please visit yorkhistorycenter.org. Thanks.
One of the reasons this group was founded was to try to recruit or to let people know about our journal. It's the Journal of York County History. And so it is published once a year, and it has a deadline of December 1st. So it's a scholarly journal. Most of the work is footnoted, not all. And so if you have a topic that you're interested in, then you have to December 1st to get it done. And then it goes through a process. So we're working on 2026 now. In other words, December 1st will be the deadline for that. And of course, things relating to the American Revolution will be a priority. If you're in that area and work in that area, consider it. But really, we're accepting on any topic. So we're really proud of this. It's a small book every year, and you get a lot of help along the way in terms of the editing and so on of it of your work. So you're not out there alone. You have people you have trained editors that will work with you on it to make your pieces the best they can be. So I wanted to just point that out, and then I'll just go ahead right into the introduction of Norina, and she's going to be talking about her book Glorious Sadness, but she also the topic of her talk tonight would be purpose in the midst of tragedy, and so she's going to be talking about writing her book. From the purpose to the vision, talking about the purpose of the book and the vision behind the book, and then bringing it to as a book form, taking it off the press. And Norina, it's interesting that she'll be talking about her key role in really the first mass casualty event in York County in the 21st century, and involving an institution, one of our institutions, and that was the school down in Winterstown. And it's interesting, we just had, as we well know, an event just in the last couple of weeks, another mass casualty event. It's kind of a bookend, 25 years, 24 years apart. And we're understanding it just in the news today, there was another attack or a violent act over at York Hospital at the same time that it was happening at UPMC, and no one was injured, or no one was killed in that attack, but it was a violent attack. So I think the topic tonight is really timely, and I think that you'll, I don't know if enjoy is a word, but we'll all benefit from what Norina has to say tonight. So, ladies and gentlemen, Norina Bentzel.
Thank you. Thanks, Jim. And thank you for having me here tonight. I really appreciate being here. I enjoy going out and speaking to people. And I've been doing a lot of speaking actually ever since 2001 when the machete attack happened at my elementary school. So I'm Norina Bentzel, and I was a teacher for 18 years and then a principal for 18 years. So I was in public education for a total of 36 years, and that was enough. In 2017, I decided to retire. However, I am still an adjunct professor at York College. I supervise student teachers, and I can do that on a part-time basis, so I do enjoy that. But I'm here to talk to you about my book that I wrote, Glorious Sadness. This event was unfathomable. Just like what happened at UPMC, it's still rocking my world. But I learned so much from it throughout the years. And as an educator, I felt that I can't just keep all this information to myself. I really need to share it because I think I can benefit others in some ways, as far as through the healing process and the process of understanding crisis and loss and perspective and just so many other things. So I'd like to share some of that with you today, but I'm also weaving in like how to write a book too. I was told to weave that in. So I'll be jumping a little around, but I'm going to try to tell as much of the story as I can through the process of that as well. My book, Glorious Sadness, has a subtitle, Faith, Love, Hope, Trump's School Attack. And I just want to say that the word Trump doesn't have anything to do with the president. Somebody has asked me that already in one of the speaking engagements, and I said no. The game, I don't know if you ever heard the card game 500, not 500 rummy, but 500. When you have Trump, that is one of the suits in the card game, and it overpowers everything else. My mother and father were both school teachers, and their friends from college, they were friends with them throughout their lifetime. They used to always play the game 500, taught my husband and I how to play it. That's why the word Trump means it overpowers school attack. It is a memoir, which just means it's a true story, and it's based on my true story, my life. So when you, or if you get my book and read it or have read it, you'll see that there are things in there about my life. And really, those things had helped me get through the healing process of being attacked at my school the way I was. The attack started with me at my school, and it ended with me at my school. In the middle, there were other things that happened though. 11 of our 23 kindergarten students were mildly to moderately injured. 2 of my teachers were mildly to moderately injured. I was the most severely injured that day. I'm okay with that. I'm really okay with that because if anybody had to be injured, I felt like it should be me, as you know, all of those folks were under my care. The second thing is I have a great salvation from knowing that no one died in my school that day because it could have been very, very different. And I can live with that as well. As far as my book goes though, and to write this book, this event happened in February the 2nd of 2001. We're now 24 years in the future. I would say a few weeks after this happened and I got to process really what had happened, I knew that someday I would write a book. I knew I would. And so through the years, I kind of collected everything that happened with me and to me and the people around me for that opportunity. And so that helped me a lot in writing the book. But my vision and my mission is very important. And you'll hear it throughout what I tell you tonight. I had to take a really tragic event that is unthinkable and turn it into an event where positives could be gleaned out of it. We can learn from it, lessons can be learned and hopefully help others. I wanted it to be more of a, I guess positive's not the word, but I wanted it to be more of a book where people could hear what happened, what we went through, and how to kind of process out of it and get back to some sense of normalcy. And so that was my vision and my mission. And there are other themes in there that I wanted in my book too, which I'll share with you as we go through. But everybody has a story to tell. So you all can write a book. If I can write a book, you can write a book, right? You all have a story to tell. And this is my story. If you would talk to my kindergarten teacher, she'll have her own story. If you would talk to the third grade teacher and my nurse, they would have their own stories, and we could go to the children, and we could go on and on. I chose to self-publish my book. I went through Kindle, publishing, and that is direct publishing, through Amazon. And they have an awesome site. You can just get on your computer and just start from scratch and just work the whole way through it. It's pretty awesome. And I chose to do that instead of a national publisher because I really wanted control of the story. I didn't want people to take it and focus on the horror of it because it was horrific. It was brutal. And I didn't want that to happen. I wanted to take a whole different light on it. And I hope I was able to do that. And if you read it, I hope you can read that too. So that was my mission. My school, North Hopewell Winterstown Elementary School, I hope you can take from that that it doesn't look like a place of violence. In today's world, it doesn't matter where you are. Anything can happen anywhere. No one is exempt from any of this kind of violence. And no one is exempt from trauma. Trauma happens to all of us at different levels in our lives. Hopefully, it will never happen to you to this degree, but we all have trauma. That's the actual school, the site of the intruder machete attack. Most of it happened right in the very front of the school. I don't know if you can see this, but right in this area right here is where it all took place, really. But the biggest piece is it was a rural school. It was an awesome school. My teachers and I often said if we could put a bubble around this school and keep everything from the outside world from coming in, we can teach our children well. But on February 2nd, 2001, evil crossed our threshold. Evil crossed our front doors. And so when I look at this picture, get the right thing here. This picture right here, to me, is glorious sadness. To me, the sadness is Stankiewicz, who was the intruder that came into my school. He's being escorted out by the police officer there of my building. And that is the evil and the sadness and the horror, the suffering that happened in that school that day. But right in front of him is the glory. And the glory, if there is any glory in tragedy, it is from the response of the people that come to rescue you. And that is one of our mothers, our kindergarten mothers, sitting there consoling her son, who was just chased around in his kindergarten classroom by a man with a 2-foot-long machete. But the consolation or the consoling of her being able to hold him and want something better for him, that's my book is pretty much that's what it is, glorious sadness. This is how I left school that day. One of my teachers grabbed my head on the way out in the gurney and told me that they loved me as they were taking me to the ambulance, heading to the hospital. And I will tell you that I don't remember any fear from that event, not any fear. I don't remember any fear, and I don't remember any pain. I will tell you that they both existed. I know they both existed. I don't remember them. However, right going through these double doors, there's a set of double doors right here behind me. And right before that picture was taken, we went through those double doors. And I will tell you what I do remember very distinctly. And I remember a blanket of peace. It was like it was draped over my body as I went through those doors. And I remember thinking, we're going to be okay. We're going to get through this and we're going to do it together. And we did. So as far as publishing a book, the cover obviously is something you really have to think about, what you want your cover to look like. That is a picture of the picnic grove that is in the back of my school building. It was put there after the machete attack happened. Lots of donations were coming into the school and they needed to use those for some purpose. And they made a picnic grove in the back of the school. It is a very sacred place. I love the picnic grove. It's a place where the students can go out and just sit and talk if they want. At recess, read a book. The classes can go out to have class out there. There's just so many uses for it. And I always knew that that would be the cover picture of my book. It had to be. The rock in the center is very important as well. It was put there, the whole picnic row was put there for my entire staff because it was my whole staff that helped us get through this, not just me. This was not just about me. This was about a whole group of teachers and support teachers that put themselves aside to get through a very, very tragic event, and for the care of their students. So I knew that would be the cover. Then you got the back of the book here. So you need like a synopsis of the book at the top. So when people read it, they want to read your book, so they buy it. There's a small biography of myself at the bottom. And if you use the right template, you can get a picture back there too. Now, not all templates from Kindle Direct Publishing allow you to do that. There are differences in their hardbacks versus their paper copies. Also on the back there, you have the UPC code and everything for the purchasing part. Inside, right inside the book, I had to do some thinking about this. You can put what's called either an introduction or a preface or prologue or a foreword. And so I made a choice that I wanted to do a prologue. And the prologue that I wanted was about this story being about evil versus good. Evil came into my building that day, and I believe that the good that came through me prevailed and overpowered that evil. I do. So much divine intervention happened that day in my school, and if you read my book, you will read about it. It is beyond my understanding on an earthly realm, but a tremendous amount of divine intervention happened that day. So my prologue was about evil, the things about Stankiewicz, and then goodness that hopefully I portray and carry with me. Inside, then I have a dedication page, and you can either dedicate 2 or dedicate 4. And I had a whole listing of people that I dedicated my book to. And also on this side, this is a whole different page in my book, but I decided, I couldn't write this book without talking about Stankiewicz's life, because I didn't know this man at all. I heard of him 5 years before this, but I didn't know him. So I needed to research his life, I really did. And so I didn't want to make a big production about his life because that's what he wanted. He wanted attention, and I did not want to give him any more attention than he's already gotten. So I chose to do a timeline when I got to his life. And so it was more of like bullet points. I didn't want it to be, like I said, a big production, but I've got several pages about, his life growing up and how he got to be a person that can come into a school and do what he did. That's really what I wanted to know. At the end of the book, then you can, you have an author page, you can have a picture, and also have a larger biography than the back of the book. References, if you have things in your book that you need to refer, people to, because you don't want to take credit for things that, don't belong to you. So I have that. And to take it a step further, I always knew my book would have songs connected with it somehow, because that was my healing, part of my healing process was through the songs. When simple words they didn't help me in any way. People wanted desperately to help me get out of, a horrible tragedy that happened in my life. And those words just didn't have true meaning to me. But when I heard songs and the messages in songs, they meant more to me than the world. And so throughout my book, I actually have songs listed and lines to the songs. So I wanted to do at the end of my book song credits to give credit where credit does deserve. And I put a whole listing of all the songs. I don't know, I think I have 24 songs in my book listed. And then I knew book clubs were being very popular these days, and I thought, well, this actually would make a pretty good book club book. So I put a whole, what I call question plans, so a lesson plan, like a teacher would have, I made it a question plan. And I put a whole series of questions that go by chapter, and I listed the songs that went with the chapters too, if there are book clubs. And actually I have been to 2 book clubs already and been a part of their discussions. Some of those questions are very deep and they require a lot of thinking and trying to come to some solution is, what can we do so this doesn't happen anymore? That's the big question. So part of the vision, when I think about, this vision that I had, outline flow is very important. And my book took so many paths that I had to kind of try to weave it in so it made sense and it flowed together. I had divine intervention in my book. I have crisis, lessons we learned from lockdown drills, lessons we learned from security, that are in my book, that if schools out there could just read that one chapter, maybe they could put some things in place that could help their own schools. So the flow is very important. You can have paperbacks and hardcovers and ebooks through this publishing site. There are slight differences. If you go with this publishing site, they actually have only about 8 templates that you can choose to do your cover, and the back goes with it. So the template is a two-point part deal. And so when I did my paperback, there was a place to put my picture. And that was fine, because I got my cover the way I wanted it. But when I got to my hardback, I was struggling a little bit more because of it was a whole different template for the hardback. And I had to change it a little bit. The picture is a little bit different. The title is not incorporated in the picture, but on the back, there was no place to put a picture. I thought, well, I'm okay with that. I don't need a picture on the back. So, you just have to kind of work through some of those little nuances of publishing. If I could say anything to anybody, it would be to insert page breaks as often as possible, because when you start having put pictures like in your book and you start moving them around, if you don't have page breaks like shortly thereafter, once you move a picture on this page, it could alter pictures 5 pages down the line, or alter words and take words from one page and put it to another, which just distorts everything. And frustration was setting in. So having page breaks as often as possible is very helpful during, especially the editing process. I did double spacing, which is not the norm, I don't believe, to double space, but I'm going to tell you, in all my travels, the number one thing that I hear from people is, I love the double spacing. It's so much easier to read. It is the number one comment I get. So I'm glad I kept the double spacing for that purpose. However, when you do that, it increases the number of pages you have in your book, and when you increase the number of pages, the cost goes up too. As an educator, I always also I know that the learning happens best when you present 4 modes of learning. If you can do this in your book, then you will catch more learning with people, and that is auditory, which is the hearing. So if somebody reads it to you or it's on an audio device, that would catch that. Visual, the pictures are worth, a lot of words when you have pictures. Tactile, like the writing itself. I'm going to show you a picture later of Stankiewicz's writing, and you'll see what I mean by tactile then. And kinesthetic is movement. If you can put movement into it. Well, my songs, if you choose to listen to them, actually can give you some of that. And if you can get all 4 of them at the same time, you're what you call a distinguished teacher. And it's not easy though. It's not easy to get them all 4 at the same time. You have to work at it. It can be done. I had to challenge myself to write like I speak. Since 2001, I started speaking probably 1 year later publicly. And what I found is my audiences were very engaged and they listened very intently, because it has to do with children. And it had to do with, a school and a horrible event that you can pick yourself up and get out of the pit of tragedy. So my challenge to myself was, can I take what I was speaking and put it into a book? And that's what I did. And that was kind of my outline. I used my speaking event PowerPoint slides to help my outline of my book. I don't know if I was successful, but I sure gave it a try. I have had people say to me, when I read your book, I feel like you're sitting in my living room with me. And I thought, well, that's kind of what I wanted. So that was a good comment to me anyway. And I wanted to cover all the things that happened in this event. I knew what happened, I knew when it happened and where and how. I wasn't 100% sure until I researched it, why it happened, but I did find that out. I'll tell you that, I'll hold that to the end. But, so music speaks to me when simple words fail. My dad was a high school English teacher. And he was very, I want to say, he had a deep faith and was very spiritually inclined. My dad believed in a spirit world beyond this world, and he was very devoted to that. My mother up here was a fourth grade teacher in West York, and she used to sing to us and have my sister Nadine sitting next to me here is only 4 years older than I am. And Nadine and I, mom used to put us up on the stage at our reunions in our best Sunday dresses and our little white frilly socks. And we would sing You Are My Sunshine to the audience, and they just loved it, you know. So music was a part of my life from very little. And then my sister Nancy, who is 12 years older than I am right here, she would have her pool parties. Our father built us an in-ground pool at our house, and Nancy would have her friends over. She was a teenager when I was only about 4 years old, and we were allowed to stay at her pool parties. And that's where I learned to love the rock and music of the 60s through Nancy's pool parties. So music was so important to me. I took up the alto saxophone, and I also played the guitar. The guitar was just for my own fun and enjoyment. The alto saxophone I played for many years since fourth grade. Tried out at Penn State, and I was a member. I made an audition and became a member of the Penn State Marching Blue Band, which was awesome in its own right. I would go, we are, I don't know if that's my audience, if I can get somebody to do it. But yeah, so I'm very proud of that, of music and how it has helped me heal. When you look at the pictures of the schools there, the former North Hopewell Winterstown School is on the top picture, and that was built around 1954. I wanted to put a little history in for Jim over here. So it was built around 1954. I actually taught in the third floor of that building as a sixth grade teacher when the other building there was being built right on the same property. So I could watch it from the third floor of my classroom as it kind of grew up, as it was built. And the one thing we wanted to take out of our old building was the character. We said we have to keep the character. We had character, we had warmth, and it was a family atmosphere. And I will say that we did do that. The school building, North Hopewell Winterstown, was a phenomenal school, and it was a very connected group of parents, students, and staff. It was the warmest place that I can think of other than my home. Of course, I wanted to, make sure that everybody understands our superpowers, our teachers, that's our superpower. And, the teaching profession maybe never got what it should have in the past. Teachers are awesome. They have to be so many things. They're not just teachers. It encompasses so many other things. But, what's your superpower? I'm a teacher, so I'm pretty proud of that. And I wanted to talk about, the team effort. This, like I said, was not just about me. I did stop him at the end, but it was not all about just me. These 4 women, including myself, were the 4 that actually were the most involved in this event. Myself, I am there in the kind of pinkish jacket. This is our kindergarten teacher, Linda Collier. She told the children to run when he ran into their classroom and started hitting his machete on the tables and the chairs and making a loud ruckus, and then starting to hit the children as well. She yelled for them to run, and they kind of scattered. Some clung to her, but she helped in that process. She was injured, and I'll share that with you in a minute. The third grade teacher here, Stacy Bailey, kind of got accidentally caught up in the whole event. She had just left her children, dropped them off in the cafeteria for lunch, heard some commotion, and she thought the kindergartners were being naughty. So she went to see what was going on, and she found a group of kindergartners in the lobby just kind of hysterically running around, not talking, but just kind of weeping in a way and crying and yelling and screaming. And she wasn't sure what was happening, but she kind of gathered up that group and started heading back to the classroom. She had no idea that's where Stankiewicz was. She actually bumped into him, and he took a swipe with his machete at her. He bruised her, but did not cut her. And then, very importantly, our school nurse. She was very involved in the event. She was not injured. She was the only one of us that was not physically injured. And thank goodness for that, because we needed her when we finally got it under control. And she had to triage, who was the most injured? Was it a student? Was it a staff member? And she had to put some aside to help the ones that were most injured, which in our case was myself. So it was tough for Denise. That's Denise's hours, by the way, to get through that. But it was a team effort. In my book, though, like I said, I did not want the attention to focus on him. So most of the pictures in my book give him what I'm going to call, I don't know if it's accurate or not, I'm going to call it diminished or negative attention. Where almost every time you see his picture in my book, you see a police officer with him. I don't want anybody out there in this world to think that it was good for him to come in my school. There was nothing good about it at all. So yeah, there's police with him every time. And one of the things the whys of why he came into my school, I'll tell you one of them right now. He wanted attention. And what better way to get attention than come into an elementary school and create a crisis? So I try not to give him too much attention myself. As far as Stankiewicz left our school in a police car. Let me tell you, the rest of us, Denise, like I said, Denise was the only one that was not injured. So after they took us to the hospital, she was kind of there to help with the reunification process of getting the children to their families. And also she was there to be able to tell the police more or less what happened because she was in the area. Where the rest of my teachers had no idea what was going on. They were locked in their classrooms. I actually pushed the lockdown bells and the panic bell, and they got to lock down in their classrooms. So they didn't know what was going on. So Denise was there to help with that process. Stacy, like I said, was injured under her left arm. She had a bruise right under her arm here. We believe he probably hit her with the blunt end of the machete instead of the sharp end. I saw Stacy in April, this past April, and she said she still has a mark under her arm. It's a white mark now instead of a bruise. Linda Collier, that's the way she left school that day on a stretcher. Her right hand here, when he barged into her classroom, she came to stop him or yelled at him, no, stop hitting the children, and then told them to run. He actually took a hit at her and he sliced her across the palm of her right hand, very deep slice there. But she still has a lot of disabilities with her hand to this day. Up here, our youngest kindergarten child leading the school in the arms of a police officer. One of our most severely, moderately injured students leaving our school in the arms of a paramedic. And then, like I said, this is a picture of me leaving the school on the stretcher. Now, those pictures have a lot of emotions tied to them when you know what they are. So pictures, I think, are an awesome way to help get your message across also, other than just text. And artifact pictures are very important. Things that you might not have a photo of, you can make a photo of, and I did several times. My key card right here, actually, at one point after our first encounter in the hallway, Stankiewicz had been striking me. He was at my head at the beginning, striking my head, and I had my arms kind of protecting my head. But then after we backed down the hallway a little bit, he took his machete across my stomach area. And I will tell you, that little 2-inch by 3-inch piece of plastic was sitting in exactly the spot where the machete hit me in the stomach. My key card they found in the hallway, it's shattered. My stomach was bruised severely, but I was not cut. Now, talk about divine intervention. To me, that was divine intervention. And if you want to think it was coincidence, that's okay, but I'm gonna go with divine intervention. So, that's my key card that was hanging around my neck. When I got to the hospital, one of the things they had to do on my left hand, because I had my little finger here and my ring finger here were detached from my hand. Now they were still connected with the flesh, but they were detached from the rest of everything in my hand. And if you think about when you cut something with a knife, like a piece of steak, you cut through everything. And that's the same thing. Everything was cut from here the whole way to here. I remember at the hospital, they had to get their little wire cutters out. And they had to cut my engagement ring and my wedding band off. And it was very upsetting to me when that had to be done. But so I took a picture of those and put them in the book as well. And how do you get kindergartners into their classroom when the last thing they remember was a man chasing them around with a 2-foot-long machete? Why don't you give them a teddy bear and take them to the library first, and then you say to them, hey, this is your new teddy bear, you can keep it, but you know what, your teddy bear never saw your classroom. Can you take your teddy bear to the classroom and show them? And all but one student went right in the classroom. Took that student a couple days longer, but it's the power of a teddy bear. I put in some pictures of my x-rays. My arm, my left arm was severed here and here, right back to back, so I have a titanium plate in my arm to this day. It'll be there forever. And also, this is my small finger, this is my finger detached here, and this finger is detached back here at the knuckle. So again, you can see it, you can feel it a little more when you see the pictures of it instead of just hearing about it. Up here, after there was a murder-suicide then in our junior high school, and we lost my friend and colleague, Dr. Gene Sebra, and a student who shot him that day. After that event, our rival, Dallastown, their student council got together and made those dog tags, and they sent them to all of us at in our school district, and they say, red line, we're holding your paws. And that to me just was about community. That's how the community comes together and helps you. And it seems like maybe a simple thing, but it was very meaningful. You do a lot of research. I had a lot of research through the newspapers, and I read through them a lot. And through the years, many things had been written that I could pull from. And right after the event, a tremendous amount of things have been written that I could pull from, especially about Stankiewicz's life. So accuracy of information is very important when you write a book. And I wanted this book to be accurate, because there were things out there that were not accurate about it. One of the first things I can tell you was that in the newspapers, and actually in my mind and in some of my teachers' minds, instead of a machete, we thought it was a piece of wood. And it was published as a piece of wood in the beginning. It wasn't a piece of wood. Now, my mind, I remember outside the classroom thinking, it's a piece of wood. I can withstand wood. Keep coming this way, get away from that classroom. I kept saying it in my mind over and over again. You know, it wasn't until 5 days later that I realized it was a machete and not a piece of wood. But you want to get accuracy of information in your book. And I put honorability to the people also affected. Not everybody has the same perspective that you have and that I have. So I wanted to make sure I wasn't trampling on anybody's feet. And I had to be cautious. Like with the kindergartners, I asked some of them, would they like to answer some questions and have a voice in my book? And 12 of the 23 answered yes. And so they answered some questions, and it's in my book. But there's another 12 out there or 11 out there that didn't want to, and that's okay. You have to be flexible about that. Perspectives vary very much, and that I learned that very quickly. Not everybody has the same perspective that I have, even though you think they should, they don't. And people don't know my perspective as well as they think they do either. So that was a learning process. Like I said, everybody has a story to tell. If you read my book, you will find that it is about a whole group of educators that put themselves aside for their children. It's also a story about crisis and trauma, healing. And I will say that if anybody goes through trauma or traumatic events in their lives, it's about one thing. It's about what you lose. It's about what you lose. And you might lose a family member, or you might lose your feeling of security or your sense of trust or a relationship, but it's what you lose that it's about, and how you can get out of that piece or how you can move forward from that piece. So perspective and loss and attitude, and then finally resilience. Once I could get an attitude that I can get through this, it's going to be hard, but I'm going to work through it and I'm going to do it. once I did that, then I became more resilient. Anybody can do it if I can do that. It's a story about faith, love and forgiveness and hope. I was able to forgive the person who came into my building, Stankiewicz. And that was a process of its own, which I'll share with you. But it's also a story about lifelong learning and educating others. I really want to help others understand what it's about and try to find a way to stop these things. This is nonsense. It is not okay for humans to kill other human beings in hospitals, in schools, at concerts, anywhere. It's not okay. How, we can't, somehow we have to get it to stop. And I don't know what that is, but if I can help, I will. As far as forgiveness goes, after the Nickel Mines shooting happened in October of 2006, a man went in the Wormwood Schoolhouse. Maybe you remember this. He shot all the girls. 5 of them died that day, and 5 of them were injured, mostly critically injured. The next day on television, I saw a procession of the Amish buggies like this, and they were heading to the mother and father's house, the mother-in-law and father-in-law's house, and the wife, the houses of the people of the perpetrator that came into their building and did what he did. The next day, they went to offer forgiveness, to comfort them, to take them food, and to console them. One of them, I read, hugged and held one of the family members for about an hour. And when I saw that, I thought, if they can do that with what happened in their environment, I can forgive Stankiewicz for what he did in mine. Forgiving does not mean forgetting, though. Trust me. And it does not mean condoling. It's a whole different thing. But that's how I finally was able to forgive him. So what I decided is I was going to write a letter. Since I was a he assaulted me in a way that was like he was going to murder me. So attempted homicide. So I was given the right to have a mediation process because of that. I didn't want to meet with him. I just wanted to send him a letter. And so that was the letter I sent him. And the basic idea for me was that I wanted him to know that I forgave him. That's what I wanted. I also had about 6 questions that I was hoping that he would answer in that letter. Now, that was my letter on the top, and his response to this letter didn't come to me. He had been contacting York Daily Record reporter. He had been writing to Melissa, a reporter there. And after he got the letter, it took 3 years to get my letter to him through the mediation process in prison. When the letter got there, he refused to read it. And so when he wrote the reporter, this is what he wrote. Wow. Mrs. Bentzel has written to me last year. I refused to read the letter. It is in my file. I will never read it. I was told it was nice. I don't care about her life, her thoughts, her emotions. I don't know her. She is meaningless, underline the word meaningless, wow, to me as a human being. He's right. We don't know. We didn't know each other. But part of why I put that there, and the reason I put it in my book, in his writing, and this is his writing. So I want you to see the difference. That's his emotions right there in that writing. Mine was more just matter of fact. I wanted to know, I'm forgiven, he's forgiven. But I was hoping he would answer those questions, and he did not. Some writing integrity I put down, and we talked a little bit about this, but I had prior conversations with a lot of the folks, that were at the event. Of course, these ladies, with the exception of Denise, sadly, Denise died in 2018 with a 5-year battle with cancer. And so she's no longer with us. But I did talk to many, many people. And I talked to others who had firsthand knowledge, like counselors, psychologists, people in that way, because I had been taken out and I was gone for 2 months. I went back to my school as the principal in April, 2 months after this attack, on a part-time basis. It wasn't easy. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life to get back to my school. But once I got there, then I didn't want to leave. So it was important. And you have to be respectful of viewpoints. Like Larissa, Stankiewicz purchased a mail order bride from Russia. Her name was Larissa. I'm not gonna get into the whole story, but I talked to Larissa a couple of times. And he came into my building because he was angry with her. He wanted her to be his wife, and then things didn't work out and she left. And then he was angry with the government because, you know, they wouldn't deport her back to Russia. But I did talk to Larissa, and I wanted her to know that I was writing a book. And so we had a nice conversation. She still lives in the area. And Gene Segro, when he died, my colleague, the principal at the junior high, I wanted to make sure that his wife Lynn was okay with me putting some things in my book about Gene. More so in my book to say I wanted to keep Gene's memory alive. He was a great principal, and it was a horrible event. So I talked to his wife about that. So it's important to, I think, talk to people and make sure you're not trampling on anybody's toes. My own family. I wanted to at least have my own family in there also a little bit, because, you know, people, I don't think everybody realizes that it affects the families of, you know, the people that are injured and hurt. So, you know, my husband, we were high school sweethearts. We actually first met at the age of 13. My mother knew him before I did because she was his fourth grade teacher. And he's been by my side ever since. We just celebrated our 40th anniversary not too long ago. Then my daughter, when they had the dedication for the picnic grove, my daughter was an excellent singer. And so I had her sing at the picnic grove, and she sang the song Hero. I talked to my students that day about that anybody can be a hero. You don't have to do something grand to be a hero. You can be a hero just by having a good character, being a good person. You can be a hero. So she sang at that event. My oldest son is a really good artist. And so I asked him if he would draw a picture for me to put in my book. And at one part in my book, I talk about it. If I could give you a concrete picture of what trauma is, that's what it would look like. And I describe it in my book. And then my oldest son, Ryan, painted me a picture of that. Now, it's not as good as if it would be in color, but it's as good in black and white as it could be. And that's a decision you have to make when you publish a book too. Do you want your pictures in color? Or do you want them in black and white? If you choose color, the price goes up. If you choose black and white, the price is a little bit more manageable. So that would look so much better in color because there's a rainbow in the center of it there, but you know, you can only do so much. And then my youngest son, Josh over here, he was affected very, very severely. He used to have a nightmare and it had to do with our go-kart. And that at night he would be screaming in his bedroom, and it was the same reoccurring nightmare over and over again. It was the same story he had over and over again. He was driving the go-kart, he accidentally ran over a worm, and every time the worm, he said, was me, and he was killing me as he was running over me in the go-kart. So you know, it affects all of us. Copyright laws are important. 24 songs in my book. I had to make sure that you know, the copyright laws were good. I actually asked Anne Murray if I could put that picture in my book. She said yes. At the end of my book, I have an essay that was given to me, and it actually, after my research and I found out where it came from, was written by the Reverend Dr. Peter Marshall, and it was in his book called Mr. Jones Meet the Master, and that was published back in 1949, and I actually contacted the publishing company and got permission to put that essay in my book. So you have to kind of be careful with those things. The editing process, one person edited my book twice. She was a high school English teacher and someone I knew. And she liked to do it with a red pen on printed copy. And trust me, she was brutal. and I told her I wanted her to be brutal because that's why I wanted her to edit it, right? But she actually ended reading it twice because she said the first time she would get so caught up in the emotional pieces of it that she was afraid she missed something, so she read it a second time. And she was equally brutal the second time. Second person edited my manuscript, Jim McClure, edited my manuscript, so thank you for that. And he looked at mechanics and story sequence and just about anything and everything that he could find and that came to surface. He wasn't as brutal, but I think it was because he has a way of kind of just sliding his thoughts in, you know, without upsetting anybody. So he's good about that. And then right before I published, after I got my proof copies back, I asked my family if they wanted to read it, not before that. I didn't want them to read it before that. My daughter's-in-law and my daughter read it then, and they were brutal. And so through all those pieces, though, so many things were picked up that I would have missed. And that's important, but as the author, I read it so many times, and finally, I just couldn't read it anymore. I had to finally publish it, but be prepared when you have people edit it for feelings of inadequacy, because I did. I felt like, I thought I was pretty good at writing. My dad was a high school English teacher, you know, and no, they needed to edit. Sometimes the author's vision and the editor's vision may have differences, and but you have to remember at the end of the day, your name is on that book. And so whatever you put in it, you're responsible for it. So you have to be comfortable with that. Self-publishing, once I updated the manuscript and the pictures, it started to kind of come to life. And then I could see little nuances of, it was some were over the margins, some were a little distorted, they weren't as clear as they should be. And I got to change some of those through that process. Let's see, I'm gonna go kind of more quickly here. The front and the back of the book are automatically in color as part of the program, and I opted to go black and white, like I said. Right before I hit that final button to publish it, I had a sense of vulnerability hit me though. You know, I was putting out there for whoever was going to read it, a lot of information, a lot of which was about myself. And I wasn't, you know, I started to feel a little insecure about that, but I thought, well, you know, you wrote this book, that's the purpose, so here we go. Some are gonna like it and some are not. And that's just the way it is. And after uploading the manuscript, I will tell you that KDP failed it, kept failing it, failed. And I thought, I can't do this. I was frustrated. I thought, I'm never gonna publish this book. My youngest son sat down with me at the age of 22 at the time, 23. No, I lied, 28 or 29. And he sat down with me with the technology piece of it and helped me with some of that. It was a lot, it was all related to, they were outside of the margins. Because my book ended up being this thick, it made the spine thicker. When you make the spine thicker, the margins have to change. And I wasn't prepared for that until we manipulated all that and got that to where it needed to be. And then you got pricing, you know, KDP has a formula for pricing. You actually, they tell you how much the estimated cost is based on the size of your book. And then you set your own pricing. You can see what the royalty will be, and royalty for paperback, ebooks, and hardbacks are a little different. They'll send you the royalty 3 months after you publish, so you have to wait 3 months till you get anything, and then every month after that. They have good reports, and you can see exactly who's buying, how many paperbacks, hardbacks, and ebooks throughout the month. Then you have advertising and marketing to deal with as a self-publisher. So you have to look on Facebook and go to organizations, people you know, websites, word of mouth to go out and talk to people about your book. I've been speaking at libraries, churches, organizations, Rotary clubs, Lions clubs, conventions, conferences, churches, it goes on and on. Some places allow you to sell your books and some places do not. And you have to be prepared for that. My book you can buy on Amazon, so if I can't sell it, then I take a little card that says how you can purchase it along and give it to the people. And then flyers, I gave this flyer when Jim and Scott Mingus Sr. and I did a meet and greet at the Belmont Bean Company. We put a little flyer out for that. So making those things help with that publishing and advertising piece. And I have business cards that I made, and also those little cards that tell you where you can get information on Facebook and Instagram, and also how to purchase the book on Amazon. So that was a quick way, if I wasn't allowed to sell books, that I could get it, at least information out there. You know, the story kept going as far as the actual event. We had court proceedings that we had to go to. Stankiewicz told us in one of the court proceedings that he would probably not last longer than 15 years in prison. He was sentenced to between 132 to 264 years in prison for 14 different acts that were criminally put against him. He did plead guilty to all of those. And, he lasted about 23 years. They found him on November the 27th, 2023, unresponsive in his prison cell. So he died that day. But he has the longest sentence for a non-murder charge in York County. Opportunities started to land on my lap that I did. Lots of speaking events happened. I was on 2 mini-series. I Survived Surviving Evil. I was in People magazine, and that's the closest to Brad Pitt as I will ever get. I made a book called Natural Born Heroes in chapter 5. I was on talk shows and podcasts, and probably the most significant and most powerful thing I've ever done was speak twice to 2 different sets of prisoners independent of each other. And they listened intently too. I talked to them about the impact of their crimes on families. And they were very, very respectful. My journey keeps going on, you know, from leaving my school to all the 800 cards and letters that I received in the mail from people, some I knew and some I did not know, to going down to Alexandria, Virginia, and looking at the Tree of Life Memorial that was put in for Dawn Hochsprung. She was the principal at the Sandy Hook event in Newton, Connecticut. She lost her life when she heard gunshots and went toward them to see what was going on. 21 of the first graders were killed and several of the adults, including Dawn. They put a memorial in for her after that happened. That was in 2012. And any state in the United States could have a leaf engraved with their name. A principal could have a leaf engraved with their name on it. Someone who made huge sacrifices for students. And so in Pennsylvania, there are 2 leaves engraved there. One is for Jean Seagram, my colleague, and one is for me. I had never seen it until last January. I went to see it. And what I took out of that, though, is this. The names, that is not a memorial you want your name on, number 1. Number 2, the people that have their names engraved in that memorial, many of them did not survive. And so part of my purpose in the midst of tragedy is maybe I can have a voice for those people that no longer have their voices as principals. And so, you know, Jim and I go to different events. He's so gracious to invite me to different places. We were there selling our books at the Rev Stadium one day. I'm at a pool party there signing books for people that I know. And most recently, I did a women's retreat at Living Word and signed books there. So, you know, my journey continues. And that is my book. Purpose in the midst of tragedy. The second reason he came to my building was, other than he wanted publicity, is he wanted revenge on the US government because they wouldn't deport Larissa and the 2 girls back to Russia. And this was his way of getting revenge. So those were his 2 reasons. But thank you for being attentive, and I don't know if they have any questions.
Yes, we'll let's definitely take questions here, and maybe I can start off because I think that maybe this is a question. I think that Norina was so giving credit to so many folks as she did so wonderfully. Maybe we don't know exactly what she did there in the school. So would you talk about how you subdued him and also how close to death you became?
Okay, sure. So the event began with me. I found him, again, through divine intervention. My course of actions kept changing. I found him right outside the kindergarten classroom, kind of looking in the classroom. He didn't have a badge to go down our hallways, so I approached him. He started attacking me at my head. Like I said, we moved down the hallway. I eventually got to where the door to the office is, where my lockdown bell was. And then he took off and ran from me. I went in, locked down the bell. He went into the kindergarten classroom. Those kids scattered, some of them, but some of them clung to their teacher, and she came in the office where I was and where my nurse was. We ended up in the health room. We got the children all locked in a big bathroom in the health room with a mother, and the mother had 2 preschool children with her. One was hers, one was a play date for her child that day. Got the kids in there, told her to close and lock the door. My school nurse, my kindergarten teacher, and myself stayed out. Stankiewicz chased them into the office area. We were in the health room. We tried to keep the door shut. We couldn't. In his rage, he pushed the door open. He came in on me for the second time, started attacking me at my head again. I was starting to fall over. At some point, I don't know how, but I gained some courage and strength. One more time, he turned away from me for the first time that I was with him. Either my nurse and my teacher were trying to sneak out behind him and get out the door, and they took his attention, or I was starting to fall over, according to the mother who just closed the door. She saw me starting to fall over, and he thought, well, she's no longer a threat. For whatever reason, he turned away from me for the first time. I yelled to my teacher and nurse, help me get him down. I jumped on his back. When I jumped on his back, I heard clink. Clink meant he dropped his weapon, which was good. I'm holding on to his back, and I felt, honestly, never felt anything like this before. I felt the life from this man drain through my body, go the whole way down my legs to my feet and out the floor. He walked a few steps after, well, actually, we stumbled over to the desk first. I wrapped my arms around him to comfort him. I told him to relax, it's over. I'm looking for the machete. I can't find it. My nurse and my kindergarten teacher did come back in to help me when I yelled to help me get him down. My nurse took the machete out and hid it in the out in the lobby under a bench. So Stankiewicz then, I couldn't find the machete. I released my arms and just kind of walked away. He just moved back and sat on a chair right outside that big bathroom with all the kids and the mother that were locked in. When the police arrived, he was still sitting in that chair. He was like comatose. He never moved after I jumped on his back. It was like he had no more life in him at all. Again, to me, that was divine intervention. As far as my injuries, you know, those two fingers were amputated from my hand. I have a deep cut here. I have a titanium plate here holding my ulnar bone together. My thumb was partially amputated on my right hand. My surgeon told me after I got to the hospital that I lost 50% of my blood at my school back then. So I was in and out of shock. I have a pretty good recollection of many things, but I was blipping in and out of some things, but that's kind of how close.
And Ken Webb, get your questions in a second. A character who was in the book quite a bit was, in terms of your recovery, was Andy Siebel. Was talk a little bit about the recovery, if that's the right word.
Yeah. So WellSpan had an employee, and still does, an employee assistance program. Our school district was a part of that program. So when this event happened in my school, they connected into that program, employee assistance, and Andy was the director at the time. And so he came and helped my school tremendously get back to a sense of normalcy. He brought with him so much knowledge that as a school district, we just would not have had to get through such a tragic event. It was very important to tap into people who were more knowledgeable in the area of trauma and tragedy and loss and how to get through it. So he would connect with organizations that would provide teddy bears for the children, and he would coordinate getting me back to work. He came with me the first time that I went back into my school. He was with me, my husband, and Nancy Grove, an interim principal, was with me that day. But without Andy, I don't know, how we would have gotten out of that. Andy and I are still really good friends all these years later. In fact, we just did a keynote presentation in Nashville, Tennessee in December together. So we've bonded a nice relationship.
Now, go ahead and ask your questions if you would, and repeat the questions.
Did I hear you say that you heard of Stankiewicz 5 years before the incident?
Yes.
Could you elaborate?
Yes, so the question is, did you hear of Stankiewicz 5 years before the actual incident? So in 1995 is where his name came up. He lived in the North Hopewell Winterstown attendance area, school attendance area at that time. And he had purchased the mail order bride just before, a couple months before February of 2001. Let's see, of 1995, he had purchased her for $15,000 to come over to the United States to be his wife. She brought with her 2 children, 2 girls. One was a 4th grader, one was a 6th grader. Those girls were in our school in 1995 when they came over from Russia because they lived in our attendance area. I had heard about him, but I was on maternity leave with my youngest son. So I wasn't at school, I was on leave. But I heard about them because I was a 6th grade teacher and my partner teacher would tell me about it because one of the girls was in the 6th grade. So my staff was teaching them basically the English language. That was the first thing they had to learn, the English language. But that's where his name first came up. Then he spent from 1995 for the next 6 years after she left him just being angry. He went through Bill Goodling's office, he went through our inspector's office, he wrote Janet Reno, who was the Attorney General of the United States of America, a letter and said, if you don't deport her, I'm going to cause a catastrophe in the state of Pennsylvania, and it's going to be international. So that's how we heard of him. But other than that, we really didn't know him. I didn't know him at all, really. Anything else?
How long did it take for the police to get there?
That is a very popular question. The question is, how long did it take for the police to get there? The whole event from beginning to the end when he was handcuffed was 25 minutes, but I would say till my teachers could get 911 and get to the police and all of that, they could get to us. I will say it probably took 15 minutes perhaps. I did hear that they were police cars were ramping hills though to get there. It's not like they weren't trying to get there. It just was taking time. Yes,
Were the girls, the 4th and the 6th graders still going to school there when he did this?
no.
Repeat the question.
Were the girls, the 4th grader and the 6th grader, still at the school? In 1995, he married the woman in, I want to say January of 1995. It was January or February of 1995. They were together until June, until the end of that school year. Supposedly, according to Larissa, there was either verbal and or sexual abuse going on. So she took the girls and ran away from him, and then she divorced him. And so after that, we never saw the girls again. They were somewhere else and ended up actually in West York School District for a while because my children went to school with them for a little while there. But Larissa lives in Harrisburg. Her girls, one is a beautician and she has 4 children living in Florida, and the other one is a director at a technology and science community college in Chicago. Yes.
What's the life of an author like? Like, did you finish working out your educator career and then decide to write the book? Do you travel all around? How do you find those people to connect with? Do you talk with parents of other schools that have had tragedies like this happen?
So the question is.
Sorry, that was a question.
That's okay. I'll say the first one. What's the life of an author like? I think was how you started. Yes. Like I said, I always knew I would write a book. I started and stopped many times throughout the 22 years before I actually wrote the book and then published it. I couldn't write my book while I was still working in Redline. I knew that up front. So I had to wait until I retired. I retired in June of 2017 and I thought, oh, I'm retired now, I can write my book. I started and I couldn't do it. I started and stopped and started and it just wasn't the right time, and I knew that, I could feel it. But I knew that someday it would be the right time. And in November of the year 2022, it became the right time. But November and December, are rough months, as far as Christmas and Thanksgiving and all those things that are going on. So I didn't really make it my purpose until January of 2023. It took me a year and a half of very purposeful writing. And then what I mean by that is it now became the first thing I would do when I had time instead of the last thing I would do when I had time. And once I started, I probably started writing between 4 to 9 hours every day for about a year and a half. And then the editing process took another couple of months. And then revisions took some time. So July of 29th of 2024 is when I finally published it, just this past July. As far as speaking events and a lot of Facebook and word of mouth and just going places, and then people say, would you come to me? Would you come to my church? Would you come to my Lions Club? Andy Siebold is really good about getting events in other states at conventions because he has connections to healthcare providers and behavioral health providers. So he's been instrumental in getting some of those going. And once I go to those, then some more come out of that, you know, it's kind of like that. So it's a kind of busy, yeah. I like it though. I enjoy it. I mean, what you people sitting here are doing for me today, you have no idea what you're doing for me. Here's what you're doing for me. That picture of trauma that my oldest son drew, trauma to me is cloudy. Most of it's cloudy. You know, your days are very cloudy. You just, you know, you're not always feeling the greatest. Some days are better than others. And sometimes there are real black clouds in your day, you know, it's sort of like UPMC was hard for me, I'll be honest. It's very close to my house. And what happened there that day, I can feel the pain of those nurses. I can feel their pain. Caring for people and wanting to make sure that everybody was okay and what they had to go through was unimaginable. Just like Sandy Hook was hard for me and Virginia Tech was hard for me. So those are black spots, you know, and if you're not careful, you can get sucked into those black spots because that can become just what you focus on, and that's not healthy. The rainbow, though, they're the good points that pull you out of that pit of tragedy. Like the 800 cards that I received at my house from people all over the world and even Ireland sent me some things. They started uplifting me. And that's what pulls you out of tragedy. So what you are doing for me today, you are a rainbow for me today. You really are, because it makes me feel good that I'm, you know, able to share what I know. So thank you for asking that. You had something.
You just spoke about it. I was gonna ask about the healing process and if it's hard to keep dredging up the trauma and talking about it.
The question is, is it the healing process? How hard is it when it's things happen, and does it bring back everything, the trauma again? Everybody heals differently, first of all, and number two, healing has no timeline. Those two things. But for me, the healing really took place in a couple of ways. One, because I had a tremendous support system in my life. Between my church, my school, the families, my friends, my family, everything, they all rallied around me. And I have that, number one. Number two is the songs that I kept listening to, the messages in those songs, like The Other Side. And this lady was just talking to me about that a few minutes before we started. The song The Other Side by Anne Murray is what got me back to work. I never thought I would go back to work. I thought, I can't go back, it's too hard, it's too painful, I cannot do it. I was at home, both my arms are in splints, and I listened to her song, The Other Side, over and over and over again. The chorus line in the song said, on the other side of doubt is faith, on the other side of pain lies strength. The journey may seem endless when you know the road is rough, but on the other side of fear is love. And that song is what said to me, I am going back to work. I have to go back to work. So it's a process. It definitely is a process.
We have a question online. Question is, what is one piece of advice you would give to educators today after having gone through this experience?
So the question is, what piece of advice would I give educators today after going through this experience? I think the biggest piece of advice would be this. And a school board asked me that question one time, I spoke to them. And I said to them, you might think I'm being silly. I said, but the best advice I could give to you is make good connections with your students and your parents, their grandparents, whoever, their guardians. Make good connections with everybody and make sure that you show them that you genuinely care for them. Because if you're cared for, people shouldn't want to hurt you. I had a student one time as a sixth grade, he was a sixth grade student one time, years before this happened. And I had really good connections with my students, I really did. And I worked hard at that. They knew I cared for them. He was having a rough day one day. Something was going on in his personal life and he snapped. He picked up a chair and he was going to throw it at me. He was standing about 2 feet away from me and I was just in his line of, there I was, and he was ready to throw it. I looked into his eyes and that's all it took, and he put the chair down. He put the chair down because he knew that I cared about him. I had set that up way before he picked that chair up. So caring and connecting with the people and the students is very important, I believe.
Are you gonna write another book?
And the question is, am I going to write another book? I don't think so. Definitely not like this. If I write anything, it might be a children's book that had nothing to do with this. Children's book might be a little easier to write instead of that.
What was the cost of, to write the book?
The question is, what's the cost to write the book? So when I published it on KDP Publishing through Amazon, there was no upfront cost whatsoever, none. When I published it, then they told me how much it would cost to actually print the book, depending if it was a hard copy or a paper copy, or if it was ebook online. So once I knew that, then I would pick the price. So I chose, because it's 469 pages long, it's pretty long. I chose for my paperback to be $19.99. And so then I would get a royalty from that. It actually costs about, with shipping and handling and taxes, it probably costs about $13, $11 to $13, somewhere in there, depending on shipping costs, to actually print the book. This one is a little heavier. It's got a hardback, and this costs more like $14 to $15 to print, publish, to ship and pay taxes on, and this is $24.95. So you're not gonna get rich quick off of publishing, unless you're a very famous publisher, of course. Anything else? Yes.
I have a question or two. I love your story. I have so many questions about that, but on the writer side of things. Do you have a website? I only see you have an email address there. And part two, the pictures that are in your book, were they high quality or just taken snapshots and phone pictures?
So the question, two-part question was, do I have a website? And the pictures, what quality are they? I have a website, but it's not a good website. I need to get a better website. Norina Bentzel Speaks.org is my website. But it's not, like I said, it's an old website and I haven't really updated it. But the best way to get me is either through Facebook or Instagram or email, which my email is there. As far as the pictures go, the York Daily Record Sunday News was very, very gracious to give me access to their digital pictures that they took back in 2001 and whatever throughout the years. So those pictures were high quality resolution pictures. So I have some of those in my book. The other pictures are just through my iPhone camera or pictures I took through my own camera throughout the years. They're not as high quality, so there are definitely some fuzziness. I spent a lot of time before I even uploaded pictures. I spent a lot of time trying to sharpen them up as much as I could. That took a lot of time, but in the end, it really pays off because I could get the quality pretty good. There's one or two in there that are a little fuzzy, but I kept them in because I felt like they really helped to convey the message.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I came here tonight because I'm a teacher. We used to teach at the old and the new Winterstown School. I used to come into your 6th grade class.
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
the art teacher.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if you remember me. This
Wait,
is
call.
Lois Call.
Lois Call,
I don't
absolutely.
remember.
Lois Call, former art
My-
teacher.
The new art room was kind of next to your office.
Yes,
I remember, wow, I'm lucky. I had just retired.
yes, yes, I remember you very well, Lois. Thank you for coming. You're welcome. Anything else?
Great, thank you so much. Great, just a couple things and we'll be done. One of the things that I think one of the things that, because I was part of the editing process, that's something that many authors skip. They like just to go and they may have someone proofread it, but what Norina did was she had someone edit it. There's a difference. And she was thick-skinned and took the criticism well, and she made changes where they made sense. And sometimes you go back and forth with a little bit. That's the single biggest mistake that many authors make is they don't want the editing. And I'm an editor, so of course I would say that. But the second thing I'll say is that how often do we have a chance to hear and meet a real life hero? I mean, a lot of people are heroes, and there's heroes in this room, but someone that whose actions were heroic at the risk of her life. I think the book will show when you read it that she was near death, and when you lose half your blood, it could have been a different result for her. It could have been a different result for her kids, and so we have a real life hero within our midst here tonight. I would say that the third thing I'll say will be done, or I'll be done, is that Norina speaking for Ollie at Penn State, New York on April 9th at 11 a.m. So, so if you have another chance there, it's a 90-minute window there. And interestingly, I'll be going on at 1 because I was kind of on the other side. Myself and my team were on the other side of many of those pictures that you saw when I was with the Daily Record. And so I'll be at 1 o'clock. I'll be talking about not just that case, but other big stories that journalists have to cover, including Newtown, Connecticut. So I was up in Newtown, Connecticut. So and working there, covering that. So, so that day at Ollie on April 9th, there would be a chance to re-engage with this. So thank you all very much. Dom, you'll just dismiss us here, right?
Yeah. Yeah, as Jim said, thank you all for coming. Before I dismiss you though, we have to do a little plug. Our next Writers Roundtable will be with Jeremy Young from Historic Wrightsville. So look for that at our next meeting. And then Hometown History with Jamie and myself and Jim behind the camera will be March 13th at the Children's Home of York, that's 77 Shoe House Road. And that starts promptly at 6 p.m. It is open to the public, but if you can't be there in person, we live stream on Facebook via Retro York and Preserving the History of Newberrytown. And then we archive all of our episodes on YouTube. But thank you very much, and we'll see you at the next Writers Roundtable.
Thank you.